had a bad feeling about it from the start, but not attending my brother's wedding was never an option. I was cautious, given what had happened before, but I never expected it to happen again.
If you're going to harass my wife, just leave.
Standing behind him was the bride, Emma, who didn't even try to hide her smirk. I took a deep breath. Wake up before you get hurt. If that didn't get through to them, I'd have to make them face reality. At that moment, an unexpected voice spoke up.
What are you talking about?
As shocking truths were revealed one after another, their faces grew more and more shocked. My name is Sarah Inman, and I'm 40 years old. I'm an ordinary office worker at a company. I've lived my life focused on my career and have never had a romantic partner. It's not that I wasn't interested, but I felt unqualified for a family. I didn't know how to love, and that's why I felt this way. My family consists of my parents and my much younger brother, Chris. I'm in my 40s and have years of work experience, but Chris is only 24. He graduated college and has been working for 3 years now. Chris's existence became a source of pain for me over the years. Chris was my parents' long-awaited second child. After I was born, my mother struggled with infertility and never paid much attention to me. Even when I got good grades, it was treated as nothing special. I'm old enough now not to care about praise, but as a child, it hurt deeply. I craved their love, but never dared to ask for it. One day, their faces lit up with joy.
You're going to have a sibling.
My father said that, and my mother cried with joy. It wasn't just joy, it was like a celebration. Once they found out about the pregnancy, they left me with my grandparents to celebrate over a meal. From the time Chris was in the womb, my mother would sing lullabies, and my father eagerly bought baby supplies.
We can't use Sarah's old stuff for Chris. That's right, it's cheap anyway, let's toss it.
As a teenager, I overheard these conversations and felt my heart harden. But I pretended not to notice because I was the older sister. When Chris was born, they threw a huge party with relatives, something they never did for me. I grew more and more resentful. My father had always wanted a son, so they doted on him endlessly. As Chris grew, I felt the gap between us widen. Even though I was still a child, I grew up fast emotionally and never learned how to seek affection. I don't think my parents meant to hurt me, but the words "because you're the older sister" became a curse to me. I grew up without knowing what family love was. That's why I decided to dedicate myself to my career instead of trying to build a family. And yet Chris constantly shattered those feelings. He was spoiled by our parents. They paid for all his tuition while I had to take out student loans and work to cover my expenses. I still remember my mother's cold words when I was a high school senior.
If you don't get a full scholarship, we won't help with tuition at all.
Determined to go to college, I earned a full scholarship and worked part-time to support myself. Our family wasn't struggling financially, but my parents refused to co-sign for a loan.
We won't be your guarantors. If you mess up, it'll be Chris who suffers.
That's how my parents treated me, the eldest daughter. Watching this, Chris naturally started treating me with the same disregard.
Why are you always at home, sis?
After I graduated from college, I worked from home, and Chris, only in elementary school at the time, asked me that with a smirk. He wasn't innocently asking, and there was malice behind it. My parents sighed and explained to Chris.
Your sister's a failure, that's why. Don't turn out like her.
I clenched my fists and glared at them. But they didn't notice. Since Chris was born, I was practically invisible to them. Chris grew up spoiled and selfish, even towards our grandparents. Our paternal grandparents had significant wealth, including real estate. By middle school, Chris was already trying to secure his place as their heir. He charmed them to ensure they would leave everything to him. I was the only one who knew about his true nature.
You still have that miserable look on your face, sis. No wonder you're in your 40s and still single.
One Mother's Day, I brought some flowers to my mom. Deep down, even at this age, I wanted to feel loved by her, but my hopes were crushed.
Oh, you shouldn't have. Instead, could you help with our living expenses? We spent too much on Chris's education and our retirement funds are tight.
Without hesitation, she threw the flowers into the trash. Chris washed with a smirk. I had already decided that this would be my last time coming home for holidays. Chris was talking about getting married, and I knew that things would only get worse. Even though Chris was irresponsible, once he started thinking about marriage, he began giving small gifts to our parents and grandparents. He was clearly trying to secure more money for the wedding. I had given gifts too, but they were never appreciated. My mother always said,
"It's only natural for you to repay the people who raised you."
She never once said thank you. Even Emma, Chris's fiancée, noticed the unfair treatment and would often laugh at me during family events. "Poor older sister." She'd say that under her breath and giggle. I couldn't stand attending these gatherings anymore. I decided that this would be my last family holiday and I wouldn't come back. Before I knew it, the holidays came around again. Emma was all smiles, charming the relatives while I was relegated to kitchen duty.
"Sarah, this is your job as the older sister. We can't let Emma do any of the work."
She treated Emma like a guest while forcing all the responsibilities on me. To be honest, it was easier that way. If I mingled with the relatives, they'd just try to set me up for an arranged marriage. Our family's wealth and status meant people were eager to get close to us. They figured if I married into their family, they could benefit, but I had no intention of getting married or playing into their schemes. This holiday passed just like all the others, stressful and unpleasant. I returned to my apartment, determined to cut ties with my family for good. A few months later, I received a message saying that Chris was getting married and wanted to formally introduce his fiancée to the family. I was ordered by my father to return for the meeting. I wanted to refuse. After all, I'd just be an outsider at the gathering. But when my father scolded me for not attending my brother's introduction, I reluctantly took time off to go. I had already met Emma many times and didn't like her, so I planned to leave right after the introductions. But when I arrived, I noticed something strange. There wasn't a seat for me at the table. I had been expecting some form of petty harassment, but this was beyond what I anticipated.
"Oh, I'm so sorry, Sarah. I didn't think you'd actually come, so I accidentally only made a reservation for 4.
She pretended to cry as she apologized, clearly putting on a show. I had heard that she had experience in theater, and it showed.
"Emma can be such a scatterbrain, can't she?"
I almost couldn't hold back my anger, but I managed to keep calm. "Don't worry about it. I'll just leave. You 4 enjoy yourselves." I hid my clenched fists and left the scene. Normally, they'd find a way to make a seat for me, but no one even tried to stop me. That spoke volumes about how they felt. I swallowed the bitterness and left quietly. A few days later, I received an apology text from Emma asking to meet. The message was full of emojis and didn't feel sincere at all. I hadn't even given her my contact information. She must have gotten it from my parents or Chris. I didn't want to deal with them, but I agreed to meet her, thinking I might as well get it over with. The day we were supposed to meet, she showed up 2 hours late.
"Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I accidentally gave you the wrong time."
It was a ridiculous excuse, and I knew she was lying. She ignored all my calls during those 2 hours, and when she finally arrived, she wasn't even out of breath. She didn't feel the least bit sorry.
"As an apology, I'll cover the meal today."
I knew she didn't mean it. I just nodded and followed her into the restaurant. "So what do you want to talk about?" I wanted to get this over with quickly.
"Well, since I'm marrying Chris, you're going to be part of my family now. And honestly, I'm not too thrilled about that."
"Why not?" I asked, already knowing the answer.
"Well, it's kind of embarrassing to have a sister-in-law who's over 40 and still single. I'll invite you to the wedding, but after that I want to cut ties completely."
With that, she slid a check across the table.
"You're just staying single to get more of your grandparents' inheritance, aren't you? I'll give you this money if you agree to disappear from our lives."
I remembered hearing from Chris that Emma's father was wealthy and she had access to as much money as she wanted. Whether that was true or not, I didn't care. "I don't need your money. I'll cut ties as you wish, but don't ever contact me again."
"Wow, jealous much? It's sad seeing an old woman take out her frustration on a younger bride."
My cheeks burned with anger, but I kept my cool. "How you feel about me is your problem, not mine. I don't need this money, and I won't take it." Emma's face hardened as she shoved the check into my bag.
"You're taking it, whether you like it or not. This is a legal transaction now."
After spitting out those words, she walked out, leaving the check behind. After that day, I didn't see or hear from Emma or Chris for a while. I had been busy with work anyway, dealing with some issues at the office. But just as I was starting to forget about them, I received their wedding invitation in the mail. To be honest, I wanted to decline. Why should I celebrate a couple who treated me so poorly and practically disowned me? But Chris was still my brother and I felt obligated to attend. On the day of the wedding, I arrived at the venue and got in line for the reception. One of the women at the desk saw me and whispered,
"Ew."
I don't miss her remark. Judging by her age, I assumed she was one of Emma's friends. It didn't matter to me what they thought, but being treated like that by a stranger was infuriating. What was that ew about? Did I do something to you? The two women exchanged glances before offering half-hearted apologies. I could tell they didn't mean it. The rest of the wedding was a blur. I had a splitting headache the entire time. By the time the ceremony was over and the reception began, I felt completely drained. I looked for my seat but couldn't find my name anywhere. There was no seat for me at any of the tables. Suddenly, Chris and Emma appeared in front of me even though it wasn't time for them to make their entrance. They were smiling at me in a way that made my skin crawl. They looked like mirror images of each other, both with the same smug expressions.
If you're going to harass my wife, you need to leave. I know you don't like Emma, but you need to get over it. You've always been jealous ever since we were kids. You couldn't handle someone else getting the attention for once.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emma had been the one harassing me, but now they were twisting the story to make me like the villain. The guests began whispering, assuming I was at fault. My parents, who were in on this whole scheme, yelled at me as well.
You're an embarrassment. Leave now. If you care about Chris, you'll leave.
I stared at them, feeling a deep sense of betrayal. Wake up before you get hurt. I said this as calmly as I could, staring them down. But they ignored me, and Emma started crying again, using the same theatrical tears as before.
I'm so sorry, but I forgot to reserve a seat for her. I've been so stressed preparing for the wedding.
Emma's friends glared at me, seeing her as the victim. The bride's side was clearly united against me. But then a voice cut through the room, silencing everyone.
How long are you going to keep up this charade?
Chris's eyes widened in shock.
Sam, what are you doing? I thought this was some kind of prank at first, but this is just ridiculous. I know Sarah isn't the kind of person to do the things you're accusing her of. So, what's really going on here?
Sam had worked with me for years, and he knew my character well. He turned to Emma's friends, who averted their eyes.
Did any of you actually witness Sarah do anything wrong? Or are you just going along with what you were told?
The women looked uncomfortable, clearly unsure of how to respond. Sam's words seemed to shift the mood in the room. Some of Chris and Emma's guests started nodding in agreement. Realizing her act wasn't working, Emma's face twisted in frustration.
Are you saying I'm lying? Do you think I'd make all this up?
She was still trying to play the victim, but Sam wasn't buying it.
I've worked under Sarah for years, and I've never seen her mistreat anyone. So yes, I do think you're exaggerating, at the very least.
Emma's face turned red as she shot a glance at Chris.
Who is this guy, and why is he butting in?
He's a friend of mine and works in a different department at my company.
Emma blinked, clearly caught off guard by this new information.
Wait, what? He works for my father's company?
Yeah, he's a friend from college.
The room fell silent as Emma processed this. She didn't expect someone connected to her family to defend me.
Well, it doesn't matter. This is between us. You don't need to get involved.
It matters when you're spreading lies about someone I respect.
The tension in the room was thick. Emma's attempts to discredit me were failing, and now she had a bigger problem. Realizing her theatrics weren't working, Emma suddenly started crying again.
You're all ganging up on me. I just wanted a peaceful wedding. Why can't you leave us alone, Sarah?
Sam wasn't fazed by her tears.
Crying won't change the facts. If you really believe Sarah has done something wrong, prove it.
At this point, some of Emma's friends started looking uncomfortable. They had likely been pulled into her drama without knowing the full story. But the truth was coming out, and Emma was running out of excuses.
I've worked with Sarah long enough to know when someone's lying about her.
Sam's calm, unwavering stance seemed to crack Emma's confidence even further.
You don't understand. She's always been against me, ever since I got engaged to Chris.
Her voice was rising in desperation.
She's jealous of us, of our love, and now she's trying to ruin our wedding day.
Sam crossed his arms, unfazed.
You're projecting your own insecurities onto Sarah, and it's not working.
Emma's face turned a beet red, and she was about to say something when a new voice joined the conversation.
What's going on here?
Everyone turned to see Emma's father, Brian, the CEO of the company Chris and Sam worked for, entering the room.
I've been hearing things about today. I want to know the truth.
Chris paled, clearly not expecting his future father-in-law to step in at this moment.
Sir, it's just a misunderstanding. I wasn't asking you, Chris.
His cold tone made Chris fall silent.
I heard my daughter and her friends have been stirring up trouble. Is that true?
His question hung in the air, and Emma was visibly shaken.
Daddy, it's not like that. Sarah has been...
I want to hear it from Sarah.
I hadn't expected to be dragged into a family drama in front of the entire room, but at this point, there was no turning back. I've been quiet because I don't want to cause a scene at your daughter's wedding, but I can't stay silent while I'm being falsely accused. Emma's father listened intently, his expression unreachable. From the start, Emma has treated me with contempt. She's been trying to push me out of the family. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make waves, but now I've been publicly humiliated at her wedding. The room was dead silent as I spoke, and Emma's father frowned as he took in the information.
I see.
He turned to Emma, his eyes hard.
Is that true? Have you been harassing Sarah?
Daddy, no, she's lying. You can't believe her over me.
Then where's the evidence? You've been making a lot of accusations without any proof, and frankly, I'm getting tired of it.
Emma's tears dried up instantly and her face hardened. She had never expected her own father to turn against her. At that moment, her facade cracked entirely, and the truth was laid bare for everyone to see.
We'll deal with this later, but right now I think it's best if this wedding comes to an end. We'll take care of this mess in private.
With that, the guests were asked to leave, and the reception was effectively cancelled. I didn't expect anything to blow up this way, but in the end, the truth had come out. Emma had tried to humiliate me, but she was the one who ended up exposed in front of everyone. After the chaos of the wedding, I thought things would settle down, but I was wrong. A week later, I received a message from Chris.
Sarah, I'm sorry. Can we talk?
I ignored it. Then came another message and another, each one more desperate than the last. Chris had apparently been caught in a financial scandal that tied back to Emma's family, and now he was in serious trouble.
Please, Sarah, I need your help. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have sided with Emma.
I didn't respond. It was too late for apologies now. Chris had made his bed, and now he had to lie in it. I had spent my whole life being overlooked, dismissed, and humiliated by my family. But now I was finally free. I had no intention of going back. The end of my relationship with Chris, Emma, and even my parents wasn't the tragedy they made it out to be. It was a relief. I finally had the space to live my life without the weight of their toxicity dragging me down. And as for Emma and Chris, well, they were left to deal with the consequences of their own actions. I had no interest in what happened to them after that. My focus was on my own future now. Little did I know that future would soon include someone I hadn't expected, Sam. A few weeks after the wedding debacle, Sam confessed his feelings for me.
Sarah, I've admired you for a long time, and I think I'm falling in love with you.
His words took me by surprise. I wasn't sure how to respond at first, but there was something sincere in the way he said it. For the first time in years, I felt like I was being seen for who I truly was. And in that moment, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could open my heart to someone new.
Oh, I don't want to rush you, but when you're ready, I'll be here.
His gentle smile warmed my heart, and I knew that this was the beginning of something good. After everything I had been through, I deserved a chance at real happiness. The weeks following Sam's confession were like a breath of fresh air in my life. For the first time in years, I felt lighter, as if a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Sam didn't push me, and he kept his promise. He gave me space to process everything. We continued working together, but there was an unspoken understanding between us. Slowly, I started letting my guard down. Sam was patient, kind, and honest, qualities I hadn't experienced from anyone in a long time. As the months passed, our relationship blossomed into something more.
Sarah, I know we started out as colleagues, but I want more than that. I want to be with you, if you'll have me.
His words were simple but sincere, and I found myself smiling in a way I hadn't in years. I'd like that, Sam. I really would. From that moment on, our relationship grew deeper. It was peaceful, supportive, and real. It was a stark contrast to everything I had experienced with my family and with Chris. With Sam, I felt safe and respected, something I hadn't known I needed so much. As for my family, after the disastrous wedding, I officially cut ties with them. They tried reaching out, of course, my mother, my father, even Chris, but I ignored every message. I knew that engaging with them again would only pull me back into their toxic web. I was done with being their emotional punching bag. Cutting them off was hard at first, but the peace I gained from it was worth more than anything they could offer. Sam supported me through it all, never once making me feel guilty for my decision.
You deserve to live free from their influence. You're stronger than they give you credit for.
His encouragement was exactly what I needed to hear. Meanwhile, the fallout from Chris and Emma's wedding continued to ripple through their lives. Emma's lies, financial issues, and manipulation eventually caught up with her. Chris, too, found himself dealing with the legal ramifications of their actions. The last I heard, they were separated, and Chris was struggling to rebuild his life. I felt no satisfaction from hearing about their downfall. If anything, it reinforced my decision to stay away from them. Their drama was no longer my concern. My focus was on building a life that brought me joy and fulfillment. And with Sam by my side, that life was starting to take shape.
You've come so far, Sarah. I'm proud of you.
His words were always so genuine, and they filled me with a sense of pride I hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, a year after the wedding disaster, Sam and I went out for a quiet dinner. As we sat in the candlelit restaurant, he looked at me with the same warmth and affection he always had.
I've been thinking about something for a while now.
His tone was serious but soft. I tilted my head, curious. What is it? He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box, and my heart skipped a beat.
I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Sarah. Will you marry me?
The sincerity in his eyes was overwhelming, and for a moment, I was speechless. This was it, the moment I never thought would come. After everything I had been through, after all the hurt and disappointment, someone was asking me to share a future with them. Yes, I'll marry you. Sam's smile lit up the room, and as he slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt a surge of joy like never before. We had found each other in the midst of so much chaos, and now we were building something real together. The life I had always dreamed of, but never believed I deserved, was finally within reach. And with Sam by my side, I knew that my future would be filled with love, trust, and happiness. The past was behind me, and for the first time, I was truly free. Our wedding was small, intimate, and perfect. We didn't want anything grand or over the top, just our closest friends and the people who truly supported us. The day was filled with love, laughter, and a sense of peace that I hadn't known in years. Sam, looking as handsome as ever, stood at the altar waiting for me. As I walked down the aisle, I couldn't help but think about everything that had led me to this moment. The pain, the struggles, the heartbreak, it all seemed so distant now. What mattered was the present and the future I was about to build with Sam.
You're more beautiful today than I ever imagined, Sarah.
His words brought tears to my eyes, but they were happy tears this time. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The ceremony was short but meaningful. We exchanged our vows, both promising to love, honor, and support each other for the rest of our lives. As Sam slipped the wedding ring onto my finger, I felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. This was my home, right here with him.
I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.
Sam pulled me into a gentle kiss, and the room erupted in applause. In that moment, I realized I was exactly where I was meant to be. The reception that followed was a celebration of our journey together. There were no awkward relatives, no forced conversations, just genuine joy from everyone in the room. As we danced together, Sam leaned in close and whispered in my ear,
We made it. After everything, we're finally here.
I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his embrace. I wouldn't change a single thing. It wasn't just the wedding that made the day special. It was the sense of closure, of finally leaving the past behind. My family, my struggles with Chris and Emma, the years of being overlooked and undervalued, it was all behind me now. The peace I felt was indescribable. Sam and I spent our honeymoon traveling across the country, exploring places we'd always wanted to see. It wasn't a luxurious trip, but it was perfect for us. We made memories, laughed until our stomachs hurt, and truly enjoyed every moment. When we returned home, life felt different. It felt full. It felt right. We settled into married life with ease, continuing to support each other in our careers and dreams. Sam encouraged me to pursue my passion for writing, something I had long neglected.
You've got a story to tell, Sarah. People need to hear it.
His belief in me was unwavering, and with his support, I finally found the courage to start writing again. My first book, a memoir of my journey, was published a year later. To my surprise, it resonated with more people than I could have imagined. The messages I received from readers who had gone through similar struggles made me realize that my story had power. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about helping others find their own strength. Sam was by my side every step of the way, celebrating every success and comforting me through every setback.
I told you, you're going to change lives with this.
His faith in me never wavered, even when I doubted myself. As the years passed, our life together flourished. We built a home filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. My relationship with Sam was everything I had ever wanted, and more. I never thought I'd find this kind of happiness, but here it was, right in front of me. And I knew that no matter what challenges came our way, we'd face them together. The past was behind us, and the future was ours to create. Looking back, I realized that every difficult moment, every painful experience had led me to this point. And for the first time in my life, I was truly grateful for the journey that had brought me here.